In this lesson, I'm going to walk you through the essential techniques so we can master them and begin a beautiful painting today. So let's get started. We start out by deciding what are we going to paint, on what size canvas, and what colors are we going to choose to ensure that we make a beautiful painting. I start off with my sketches, and because I've already got some sketches on my book from back in 2021, I'm going to be doing a painting on a 12 by 24 inch canvas today. And we're going to walk you through how we can create a beautiful design using a focal point. We're going to be doing this design right here as one of our designs on this 12 by 24 inch canvas to include that beautiful focal point, but with a beautiful composition as well. If you look at this composition, we can see that we've got beautiful negative space as well as the design itself. It looks super pleasing to the eye. It's very elegant and flowing, and with that focal point, it's going to be off-centered, and so it'll really bring a whole lot more intrigue into that design to make that viewer want to look more. In our lesson for today, we'll be taking you through, of course, those essential techniques of using my paintbrush that I always love to use. My favorite is the size 2 paintbrush. It's going to give us that beautiful botanical technique that we're looking for. So we're going to get right into doing our pour today. I'm going to provide you with those botanical techniques of how you want to hold your paintbrush and how you need to drag it through the paint to ensure you get that desired botanical look. So let's get right into it, okay? My first step in this process is to lay down our base layer, and that is our house interior base paint. This base paint is in fact a blue-gray color, which I am using the Color Place blue-gray color, and it's the semi-gloss, and I'm going to lay down a nice layer for my base and then begin by layering all of my colors that I have selected, and I'll walk through the color choices that we're going to be working with today to do this painting. Your base layer is a thicker layer, and that's why I believe the botanical look technique really works a little bit better for having a thicker base layer. And I think the reason for that is because when you drag your paintbrush through it, you want to be able to see that layer come through your other layers and within your design. So I'll begin spreading this layer with my spatula. You kind of want to work fast in this particular step of the process, but I'm not going to encourage you to work too fast because you do want to have a nice layer on it, and you don't want to have any of your white canvas showing through. Otherwise, it'll be an unpleasant experience when it dries. So act as if you're spreading some frosting on a cake with this type spatula. It really helps to smooth out any of those thicker areas of the paint quite nicely. I do like to cover my sides in this step as well, because that way I know I can clean the underneath portion of it as well right away to help prevent any of your design that you're creating on your canvas to distort and actually encourage it to flow over the edge of your canvas. I actually need a little bit more to ensure that I cover my edge Another trick you can do, which I just didn't do today because I want to show you that you can in fact do it this way, but to help encourage covering your sides, you could have an extra little squeeze bottle and squeeze the sides of it as well. And you can pre-paint the sides if you don't think you can cover it as well, to ensure that you do cover all of your sides. There's several different ways you can do it, but I do like to show you that you can cover it this way and it will flow over nicely. I then take my spatula and I kind of smooth out the sides and give it a nice little swipe so I can see that it is fully covered. Make sure you get the corners of your canvas as well, because you don't want to see any of that white if you're using a colored background like I am. You don't want to see that showing through, right? So let's cover everything nicely. Just take a nice couple of swipes on all of your sides. Usually able to get the back a little bit easier, but I'm at the table at a different angle, so it's a little bit more difficult to reach. I'm gonna have to scoot around my table to get the other portion of this, but I can do it. I'll just scoot around this way, just a tad bit. And you can see I can grab some of this paint on the bottom. Just drag it right across. And sometimes you can get it in one swipe. But the more important thing to do is to ensure that you've covered it, like I have. I think we've covered our canvas quite nicely now. And I am going to begin the process of popping our bubbles with my embossing gun that I showed you earlier. And this embossing gun really does work great. It just pops those bubbles nicely. As you can see, I am constantly moving this tool across the plane of my canvas to ensure that it doesn't stay in one spot, because, we are talking about heat on top of your interior house paint, but it's not a live flame. So I'm not concerned about a whole lot of issues with fumes or anything like that. I just don't want to have too much heat in one particular area where it might cause some film and drying area on that portion of the paint. It does work beautiful. This paint looks nice and smooth, and I actually don't even see other surfacing bubbles that I need to use that little tool with that I spoke about earlier, that I would typically use to pop those other bubbles on my surface. So it is looking quite nice right now, and I think I can now begin talking about our color choices for today. We're going to start off with a nice deep, rich violet purple. Then I'll go into a light blue violet purple. This is an iridescent purple, a Prussian deep blue. Here's an iridescent white. And I'll top it all off with this nice chameleon light blue. That concludes our color choices for this beautiful pour that we're going to do today. We're going to begin by designing on our canvas something similar to this particular design that I have in my sketchbook, and it includes a focal point. So you'll be able to see how I create that focal point and ensure that focal point is desirable when you look at it. And then if it's not desirable when it dries, I'm going to show you how you can fix that focal point after it dries to ensure that the end result is going to be really pleasing to the eye and you're going to be proud of it. So we'll begin by doing a design similar to this. I'll just lay this out right here. And keep in mind, this is fluid art, so you always have a design in mind because you're preparing and you want to prepare what is your negative space going to look like to ensure that those elements are all going to balance out together, correct? That's what I shared with you earlier. So I'm going to keep that on the side. I'm going to refer to it, but because it's fluid art, it may change just a tad bit, but I know that my intentions are to make it look like that. So we'll begin our beautiful design right now and I'll walk you through the steps. We'll start off with this deep, rich violet purple. For my pores, I like to start off with dark, moving up the chain to lighter. I feel like it just gives that depth that I'm looking for. There's some cases that I do like to add a little bit of lightness at the very beginning and then still continue with dark to light. And then I also keep in mind if I'm working with opaques versus transparent colors, as well as metallic or iridescent colors. I keep those in mind as well because your iridescent colors, your opaque, and your metallics they tend to be a little bit heavier than your transparent colors, and they will tend to sink a little bit as you're layering. I don't mind that because it really gives some cool effects, and every time you do a layered pour, you're going to get some different effects. You're never going to have them look exactly the same, and that's the beauty of working with your fluid arts. You're going to have those differences and you can't copy, but you can encourage similarities to ensure that your overall color choices are going to mesh and not end up by looking muddy. So we're going to begin, and my focal point is not going to be in the middle. So I like to start off with saying, okay, where is my focal point going to be within this design? And I'm going to say my focal point is a little off center from any angle that you look at it. And I'm going to put it about right here. I'm going to start off by just putting one little dot so my mind, my eyes can see where I want those lines connected. And I'm going to start off not at the very corner. I'm going to give it a little bit of swiggle and a little bit of swiggle. I got a little dot there at the end, but you can take your finger and you can just dot and bring it out. So you don't have to worry if you have little splatters. You can just stick your finger or a tool and just dot it out. So I can see my first little line there is looking good. I want to bring in another, say a line going out. Let me look at my design here. I'm going to have a line going out this way. And a line going out this way. And I'm going to play here a little bit. So I like to have it almost look kind of like branch-like. So I like to bring off a little bit of branches here and there. It gives it a little bit of interest. So that's like that. And then, let's see, I'm going to bring off a little branch like this. And maybe a little branch like this. When I add these little branches, it helps the paint to spread out a little bit more. Instead of just one line as you're blowing it, it'll help make it spread out a little. So that's why I like to add these little branches off within my design. So now that I have that design outlined and it looks really good, I like it. I'm going to add just a little bit more of this color because, as I said before, it's opaque and it does sink a little. And I want this color to actually stand out. Typically, if you want a color to stand out, you can just add one more layer to it. If you want it just to highlight, you can add it in specific areas. You don't have to add it everywhere throughout your design. I've done that many times. If you want one color in particular that you want to really have highlighted, that's your top color. That's going to really pop all over your canvas because that's your last ending color that you have laid down on your canvas. So that's the deep purple. This is the light violet purple. You can squiggle it on. I like to squiggle it. It gives it a little bit more interest, and I just think it spreads a little nicer too. That's the light violet purple. And now we'll go into the iridescent purple. These colors are actually looking really pretty together. Now, this is the Prussian blue. I love to do these lights and darks because they give it that depth. And while I was telling you I like to go from dark to light, I also want to mention I like to, when I'm splitting the colors, I like to, my first colors in this demo, I went from a dark purple into my lighter purples, and now I have my dark blue and I'm going into a lighter blue. I'm going to mix the light blue up with first. I wanted to add a little bit more brightness into this, and I do that by adding a little bit of iridescent white. That really kind of sets it off with some nice brightness. I call it brightness within this abstract painting. You don't want to add too much because it might take it over. It might take over the painting, and I don't want that. But I feel like it just adds to the brightness. And now for the light chameleon blue. Hope you guys are having fun. I know I am. I've been waiting for this. It's been a while, so I know you guys have been patient. I'm excited to see some fun art being created. Ooh, that design looks so pretty. It looks like it's dancing on the canvas. All right, so now we have our design. It's looking good. The colors look beautiful. I always take another look over to see if I see any other pinholes popping up, but I don't see any pinholes. They're looking really good here. We're now going to talk about blowing out our design and ensuring that it's going to look really pretty. I actually would like, for the most part, to keep the design on the canvas. There might be a couple of places where it might go over the edge, which I think in this design is going to look just fine in the overall composition. But I'll do my best to see if we can't keep it and control our design within the top area of our canvas. Now take my hair dryer and start blowing it out. the first thing I think about is, where do I start blowing out my design? And in this particular design, I just look at, where's the negative space? How do I want to fill that negative space? Or where do I not want to fill the negative space? And so in this case, I think I want to start like somewhere where that focal point is going to be, and it's probably going to be in this area here. And so I'm going to start blowing it up this way. Just like in my pictures, I have the arrows in my pictures, and I'm going to blow it here, blow it around, and I'm going to work my way around up and throughout the branches. And that's how I am going to follow through in this particular design to make it as pretty as possible. I start with my blow dryer turned on, and then I know where to point my blow dryer. I want to angle it at this angle here. I don't want to angle it like this, and I don't want to angle it straight down. I want to angle it kind of like at this type of an angle. So I turn on my air. I make sure that the mouth of the blow dryer is pointed in the direction of where I want that paint to blow. If I wanted it to blow that way, I would angle it that way. If I want to blow it straight ahead, I angle it in the exact location that I want that paint to actually move and move forward. Just a little trick. It's looking pretty. It looks pretty, guys. It worked. And I definitely kept it on the top of the canvas. There might be a little bit overflowing right in this area, which is fine. I think it'll look okay. There's a couple of areas that I am going to demonstrate, which I wanted to demonstrate for you, is how to use your straws, and maybe a couple other tools where we can use like this particular tool to blow out, and just show you how to use a tool like this, how we can use our straw tools to help blow out different areas of your canvas. And yeah, I think we'll just get right into it. First, I'm going to use this straw. It's got the rounded edge, which I really like the most out of the collection of straws that I have. And I see a few areas that I just want to kind of round out. I prefer that rounded look because that more mimics a leaf. And that's my overall desired look, is to ensure that we've got that natural element within our design. So I am going to make sure that my hair and my clothing is definitely out of the way. And then I'll begin to show you how I just blow these out and use that tool just for a little puff of air. Just for a little puff of air that rounds out that area where I just didn't like that little spikiness. Trying to see if there are any other areas. Maybe just a little bit right here I'll blow out. And I kind of like how the gray is just surfacing through. There are a lot of nice cells building up. Sometimes I like the cells in some designs, and some other designs I don't like them. But in this particular design, I really like it. I think it enhances it. And I think as I look at this, it's all looking really organic and really pretty. So I think now we're going to, well, I really did want to show you this. Maybe I'll blow out this area with this little tool here real quick. See if just a little puff of air is all you need. Look at there, it just really brings out that color that was hidden down below. Just a little bitty puff, and it really just helps. So I think that looks really good. I do see some sliding over the edge right here, which is okay actually. And because that's sliding over as I look at it, I may want to just puff out this area right here. Let me see if this will work a little. Maybe this tool isn't exactly the right tool for this part. I'll try, and if something like that doesn't work for you, get the straw out. Do the straw. Just blow it out, because then it gives it a little bit more wideness where this is coming over. It gives the composition a little bit more evenness, I guess. So we'll just even that out. Much better, yes. Yeah, I'm really liking it, guys. I think we did a good job on this. The colors are beautiful together. Really, really pretty. Now it's time for the fun, guys. You've been waiting for it. We're going to do the botanical technique. So where I begin is probably the most critical in this whole journey as we start learning how to do a botanical technique. And that is remembering, where do you want that focal point and which direction? Because there's always that chance of, oh no, I've messed up. I'm not going in the direction that I should be going, and then it looks a little bit wonky. So you just need to make sure that in your mind you know which direction you want that focal point to be turning, and always be turning that way. So then they're all in sync with how that vortex, so to speak, is spinning inside of that focal point. Well, I think we're going to go with using the clockwise, going clockwise. And the way you drag your paintbrush is you find where you want to stick it in the base layer, and you start dragging. You can feel the bottom of your canvas, and then you do it very slowly. And then once you're at the end of where you want it, you slowly bring it up where you no longer feel the bottom of your canvas. And always have your paper towel or rag or whatever you want to use available and ready on hand, so you can wipe the end of that paintbrush every single time. I give it a nice little twist to ensure that the end of the paintbrush has no paint whatsoever on it, because you're going to drag your paintbrush through your canvas again and again and again, over and over again. And you don't want to keep disturbing or having pools of paint on your paintbrush and dragging it through other areas. You want them nice and clean. So I've made that nice little focal point as a starting point. And now I start beginning by looking at your canvas and seeing, where are there natural leaf-like looking elements or little bends in your paint of the way you blew it out, that would look really pretty if you split it and brought it into the middle of where everything is kind of spinning. And so I see this one little area right here. It looks like a prime area at the very end of it right here, to take my paintbrush and just drag it and start creating. And I don't have to bring it all the way and keep going over the middle if it looks good. Only redo your middle of your focal point if it doesn't look good. Otherwise, just leave it and connect those lines together. It's like I did that one. So there's another leaf that we've created right there. And sometimes I skip around, and it helps with creating more dimension and then overall how I want this painting to look. So I see an area right here that I probably want to combine, and I'm going to take it in this way and start bringing it around. And then right here. And right here. Remember which direction it's all flowing. Because I could have taken that line and went this way, and that would have been completely wrong for me to do. See how it's all kind of swirling around. If this had a white background, you probably would have been able to see it a lot better. You do tend to see the background a little bit better doing the botanical pours if there are white backgrounds. But I do like having a darker background occasionally as well, so I thought I'd share that with you. Let's see. This one's a little bit different here, but I still like the design, so I'm gonna take this one like this. If you didn't like all of the gray that's happening there, after it dries, there may be a chance that I feel like, hey, we'll just add to this one at a later point after it dries, and then we can enhance it that much more. We could add, some kind of a butterfly, dragonfly, maybe a different flower or something. Those are all options at the end of your dried painting that you can do to enhance it that much more. Or if you don't like a desired area on your dried painting, we could just do something to make it more desirable. But as you can see, I'm not re-dragging my paintbrush through the same section. That's something that you don't want to do. Otherwise, you're going to get some undesirable effects. You'll get bigger lines. You'll get mixing of the paints that don't look right. So I highly recommend that you don't keep re-dragging. I really feel like how fast or slow you drag it through will give you different results also. So I tend to be on the slower side of dragging it to ensure I know where am I going and that the paint isn't pooling up in areas that it doesn't need to be. So if you drag too fast, it'll start pulling up and distort your design. That line has already been created, so there's no need to keep dragging it through. I'm only going to drag to where I see it just started there. That looks all pretty there. Sometimes in the way that you blow it out, you can see some definite areas where you're just meant to drag it that way. It's like something that was meant to be. It happens to be the best way of knowing which is your next line to drag through. I see an area right here where I just dragged to create that leaf, but it's angled off where I don't like it, right here. And I want to now blow it out to be a little more rounded. So here we go. I'm going to blow it out. Very lightly and gently. Now it's a little bit rounded, and I like it a lot better like that. It's just different areas you can see where you want it to stand out a little bit more. Sometimes I like to wiggle my vein lines a little bit rather than just straight down. Give it a little bit of a wiggle. Let's see. This one. I sometimes will imagine where I'm going to drag it and see if that will look good. Picture it in my mind. If not, I'll just move on and try to find a different area if I don't think it's going to look good. There's an area right here I want to blow out. I don't like it squared off like that. I don't think it's going to look good after I drag through, so I'm going to blow it out. That will help it to look more organic looking. I think that looks good. Yeah, all right. So now I think as I look at this, it's looking really pretty. However, I do see a little bit of distorting in my focal point right here. And so now I want to show you how we can fix that initially. So I will start in the middle here and I'll work my way out a little bit bigger and bigger, but not too big. So see how I'm just circling it, making it a little bit rounder, a little bit better looking. Just that little fix and being very careful about how I do it, I think that works a lot better. I'm going to now use my spatula to grab underneath my canvas those drips that are happening. I typically like to do this before I do my design, but I wanted to show you that you can wait just a few minutes as well. Drag up underneath your canvas to ensure that you catch those drips. That'll help keep your design on your canvas and not allow it to drip over as much. There might be some slide, but not as much as if you were to keep it like this. Get those drips. All right, I got all those drips now, and I think this painting is looking really pretty. I feel like the overall design really looks beautiful. The colors I'm in love with. One other thing I want to show you is you can now go back to that focal point now that we've made that circle and it's looking really good. But I still think it needs just one itty bitty bit, a little bit more. I want to give it a little bit more love. And I'll take that same paintbrush that I've been using and I just want to circle it a little bit more because it needs just a tad bit. Yeah, it's a little bit better. But then I also wanted to share with you what I also do to help encourage it and to give it a little bit more depth as you look at that focal point. you can just add one of the colors that's within your design. Just add a little dot. And you have to be careful, but just adding that little dot, I'll catch it so it doesn't drip somewhere else. But adding that little dot in the center helps to even drive that center a little bit better. So I think that's it for this particular painting, and going over mastering those essential techniques that you really need to ensure that you do get that desired look. So we'll just walk through some of those important steps again, is how you hold your paintbrush in when you're dragging it through your base layer. How you hold it is critical. How fast you pull it through your design is also critical in my mind. How you hold your blow dryer. It's essential that you point the nozzle of your air dryer in the direction, but also in the angle that you want that paint to flow. And you don't want to be pointing it so much where you're angling it down to get that base layer like pooling up and spilling on top of your layers that you just laid on top, because if you do that, it will be undesirable. You just want to skim over the top, so you're grabbing those top layers, so to speak, and you're mixing those top layers on top of your base. Now, as you can see, when we blew out ours, you still see some of that base layer showing through, and that could be a couple of reasons. Number one, I like how it looks, but if you don't, you should add more of your layered paints to ensure that you have enough of your paints on top so that you don't see so much of the layered or base layer shining through your top layer of your paints. I particularly like this look for this particular design. It makes it feel very organic and very plant-like to me, with the leaves and how the leaves break up with those. It's like that chemical process that a leaf will go through, that natural element that it goes through. So I feel like it adds to the beauty of the overall painting. When this painting dries, we can decide if we want to do anything further with this painting. And you and I together will go through that and we'll decide, is this the one that we want to enhance and modify and do something to make it even that much more beautiful? I'm sure it will dry beautiful, but we can decide if we want to make it that much more beautiful at the end. We have a variety of different size paintings in this next portion that I'm going to take you through, and we'll be designing on square canvases, rectangle, circles, different sizes as well. We're going to be creating some beautiful, unique, different designs on each of those different size canvases. So won't you join me in the next lesson as I take you through my process for creating on different size canvases, as well as being creative about how to use that space and not forgetting how to build a beautiful composition and understanding what negative space you still want to leave so that there is a balance between the two. I'll see you in the next lesson.